What's up, y'all? It's another episode of A Ferrell Podcast. And yes, today, as you can see, if you are watching on Spotify or YouTube, we have changed locations. I am currently in my garage, if you can't tell, by the garage door. And maybe by, the lawnmower and the weed eater, the shelves. So, yeah. Also, yes, for those of you that have noticed the stuff in the background, I've got a couple of salt packs or book bags and, a little like bag carrier thing for my service uniform. And it's not really a rucksack, but it's something I got while I was at AIT. And it's just this big book bag and it can expand, it can, shrink down. It's really cool. I like it. I don't use it a lot. I probably should. All right. Well, enough about me. Let's get into today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about critical thinking, the importance of it, talking about some routine schedule stuff, like why it is important to also have a routine or a schedule. And we're also going to do a review on something I just read in Striking Thoughts, a book about, Bruce Lee's thoughts. So, to describe Striking Thoughts real quick, it's kind of like Bruce Lee's version of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's not the exact same thing. It's not the interpretation or anything. It's just, for an example, for a reference of like what kind of book it is. But we'll get into that later. All right. So let's start off. First things first, critical thinking. What is critical thinking? Well, for one, it is definitely a lost art in today's age, in my opinion. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. Glad to have you. Hope you stay for a while. This podcast talks about, I just share my thoughts and opinions on things. And, we talk about sports, we talk about health, and I just give my opinions and thoughts on a variety of stuff. Just to, sometimes it's philosophical, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just everyday stuff. But today we're getting a little philosophical, some lost concepts and potentially things that people struggle with. All right. So that being said, what is critical thinking? Yes, it's a lost art. Like I said, I really think a lot of people nowadays, I think a lot of people just don't really care to think critically. And it's not because they don't try. It's because they just don't really care to. They think it's wasted time because it's like, oh, well, if I have to think critically and if I have to spend my time thinking about this to make an informed decision and I can't get the answer right in front of my eyes, I've got better things to do. Like short term, okay, got it, but like long term, like that is a horrible reason. Nobody should ever you should not think that way. That's just wrong. If you're thinking long term or, delayed gratification wise, that is a horrible reasoning. That's just horrible reasoning for one. Why would you ever think I don't need to think about this right now. So the answer's not in front of me. You kind of have to think to get the answer and make an informed decision. Making an informed decision is all part of it. Now, if you've never critically thought before or you're questioning whether you have or not, hey, no worries. I'm glad you're questioning it because that's another aspect because you shouldn't necessarily always believe what you see. That's another aspect of critically thinking. If you believe everything that you see, then, or even everything that you hear, you are going to be so misinformed on things and just be super gullible. Now, like for an example, I'm a gullible person. I give people the benefit of the doubt. I trust that another human is going to sit there and, tell me the truth that is coming right out of that's if that person doesn't tell me the truth, then, that says more about their lack of character than it does on me. However, it's still also a problem on my part because, I fell for that. I fell for that lie or that, misinformation. But with that all being taken into account, it's not just about that. It's, there's a lot of things that go into that. And though I might be gullible, I still critically think or question what I am being told. Yes, on the surface, I'm going to believe you, but I'm going to give you a short term answer. And then I'm going to think back on what did I learn from this conversation? What could I have said better? And I'm going to use that to improve myself down the road, which going from critical thinking, that's more self reflection. But in order to self reflect, you've got to critically think about what was going on. You got to do like a quick AAR on, what just occurred or, what was just discussed. So that way you can improve going down the road. And critical thinking is a huge aspect of improving, in my opinion. You've got to be able to improve. In order to improve, you have to be able to question your thoughts and question what is going on. and make that informed decision. Okay, am I going to improve in this, or am I comfortable with where I'm at progress wise here and I'm going to focus on something else? And how good did I really do? Like, yes, you are your own worst enemy. However, comma space, there's other parts to it. There's not it's not just black and white. You've gotta be able to, look something at the surface and then find out what is really the true meaning of it underneath. It's like an onion, it's layers. Like, you've got the surface, you've got the meaning, you've got the reason behind the meaning, and you've got the thought process behind the reasoning. Think of it like an iceberg, if you will. Iceberg? I don't know why I just thought of lettuce when I said iceberg. I guess iceberg lettuce. I don't know. I'm weird. Whatever. Plays ADHD. Well, point being, think of it like an iceberg. The iceberg is, you only see a small fraction of what that iceberg really is. You see, what did they say, like 10% of it that's sticking out of the water, the remaining 90% is underneath the surface. I mean, cliche, I mean, true. Everything looks good on the surface, but when you start to dig more into it and start doing more research into things and see the meaning and the thought process and the reasoning behind all the thought processes and everything, then you start to truly realize everything is not as what it seems to be. When you start to critically think, you start to really truly understand what things are and what the reasoning is behind it. All right, now moving on to routines and schedules. So for, some people, having a routine or a schedule is very important. I know for me, it's super important. Like, I like to be very, thorough with my schedule, and I like to know what I'm doing, when I'm doing it. And then I can go from there and, be like, okay, I'm going to do this at this time. Here's how I'm going to do it. Here's why I'm doing it. For me, like, for instance, waking up at 5:30. Okay, like, it's summertime. I'm gonna sleep in a little bit. Wake up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Go for my morning run or go for my morning ruck. And after that, I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna, right behind my chair, I'm gonna do my workout. Like, I don't know if y'all can see it, but the right there by my weed eater, there's a jack box for like a half-ton jack or whatever, and right next to it there's a plastic kettlebell for 15 pounds, and then in front of the kettlebell and jack box there's like three different bands: medium, heavy, and then ultra heavy resistance bands. I'm back, do some calisthenic stuff, maybe incorporate, if I got the rucksack on already and I want to do some squats, I might just keep the rucksack on and do some squats. Or I'll incorporate the kettlebell, or I'll use the resistance bands. The other morning, I was using those resistance bands. So, like, for me, and then after that, I'm going to, if I haven't had my morning coffee, which normally I have it before I work out, probably not the best idea, but whatever. I'll have my coffee. If I've already had my coffee, then I'm going to rehydrate, and I'm probably going to if my daughter and my wife aren't up yet, then I'm just going to stay downstairs and I'm going to either watch YouTube or I'm going to watch TV. I'm currently right now watching The Last Kingdom. Rewatching that, I should say. Such an amazing series. If you haven't watched it, go watch it on Netflix. But then, like, I've got my things that I want to do in the morning, and then after that, I might cook some breakfast or something. Depends if I'm wanting to fast that morning or not. So, like, that's just an example to give y'all. Everybody has their own routines and everybody has their own schedules. Are routines and schedules the same thing? Not necessarily. So for me, a routine is you're doing something every day, not necessarily at the same time, but you are getting it done throughout the day. You have that routine set. Here's how you do it. Like, wake up, brush your teeth, go to the gym. Routine. Scheduling is a little bit different, in my opinion. Scheduling is, like, hey, I'm scheduling a meeting. I've got this appointment scheduled. It's not necessarily a routine thing. Meeting and appointments aren't necessarily routines. Yeah, you might have meetings every day, but you got to schedule, and those meetings are of different natures, most likely, every single day. So, and I think schedules kind of go more short term versus routine. Routines kind of go more into the long term than short term, because it's harder to create a new habit. Schedules can be long term. It's more so for the short term, like, hey, let's schedule a meeting for next week. Whereas routine is constant every day. For some people, it may not be that important to have a routine or a schedule. They just go with the flow, and that's cool too. Everybody's different. Sometimes I like to go with the flow. Sometimes I like to have my routine. It just depends. It's like when it comes to, my physical health, I've got to have that routine because my physical health and my mental health are intertwined. That physical stress on my body from exercise or martial arts training, that is therapy. And that is I've got to have that routine. I've got to do that every day of some sort. It's either physical exercise, martial arts training, or both. I got to have something. That's just part of my DNA. It's hardwired. I've got to have that because if I don't work out for a few days, then I feel like absolute crap. I feel sluggish. I'm more likely to be irritated, and I really don't like that. So for me, my routine is either working out or training martial arts or both. So what do you think is better for you? Do you like going with the flow of things, or do you prefer to have your own routine? Do you like to have your own schedule set? Do you like to schedule things? What do you think works for you? And if you don't know, that's okay. You can experiment with it. That's perfectly fine too. All right. So in this part of the podcast, we're going to go over the Striking Thoughts book that I've been reading. Not the whole book. That's for a different time. I'll do a review of that book another time. But I was reading this morning the spirituality aspect of it on page 74, and it goes to page 79. So, and I'm only going to go over the aspects I highlighted. So, the first part I highlighted is in the section, the spirit is the controlling agent of existence. And what I highlighted was the spirit is no doubt the controlling agent. So, for me, I think that just means, like everything deep down inside of us controls how we act, how we move. I don't know what exactly is meant from that, but what I took away from it was, everything deep down inside of us is controlled through our inner conscience, and it moves and goes with the flow of, whatever the situation is and how we act to it and how we respond to things. Now, that can be good, that can be bad. It just depends. And I think there's a lot that goes into it, physical, mental, and spiritual health. Big triad in my opinion. So I think, if your physical health is good, mental health is good, and your spiritual health is good, I think you'll react in a good way. If it's not good, if one's thrown off, then you might act a little bit different or respond to things different. It just depends. And everybody's different, and that's okay. Now, the next part I highlighted was, the realization of spiritual forces within oneself. When you can realize your spiritual forces within yourself, the progress you make in the future is going to be unparalleled. Now, with that being said, I also think, that goes into, how bad do you really want it? There's a lot of aspects that go into that, Are you willing to push yourself? Are you willing to try and better yourself? Are you willing to put yourself in uncomfortable positions to grow? Because you do not grow when you are in a comfortable position. For example, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and you'll hear me reference Brazilian Jiu Jitsu a lot if you haven't already in previous episodes. You are stuck in bottom side control. For those who don't know, I'll put it plainly. For the person on bottom, they are in bottom side control. For the person on top, they are in top side control, and they are applying the pressure. Now, for a good side control, you need that pressure. And for those of you just listening, I'll try to help you with visualization. Think of it this way: chest to chest with somebody, but you're perpendicular. So like, you're not necessarily in the center of that person. You might be more up. It just depends on your body. But like, you could be you're chest to chest with that person and you're applying pressure, but the way your bodies are facing are perpendicular to each other. The person on bottom is trying to get to their side. However, they're still perpendicular to the person that is on top, but they're trying to get parallel. So that way they escape bottom side control. Or, they're trying to escape a different way. But the point being, they're trying to escape the pressure and that pinning position. Now, to grow from that, you have to be in bottom side control. And you have to learn, that elbow knee escape. You have to learn that ghost escape. You have to learn the techniques of it and understand the positioning of why do you want your elbow and knee to touch to close that real estate, as it's referred to. Why are you wanting to do this? You've got to understand that. And in order to understand that and get good at it, you have to be put in that difficult position that is uncomfortable. With that being said, the only way to get better at running is to train and to run. Nobody likes to run. Well, I won't say nobody. A lot of people don't like to run. And, the only way to get better at it is to run or to train, to get better at running. But you still have to run to get better. Obviously, focusing on form and all those other things. But like, point being, you have to be uncomfortable in order to grow. The next section I highlighted was intensity/enthusiasm is the God within. And what I took away from that was, we have this passion that is driven from inside of us, this inert passion that we have, whether it's, for our career fields, whether it's for sports, whether it's, for hobbies. We have this inert passion within ourselves, and it drives us, and we want to be the best at it, and we want to devote ourselves to it. Now, I'm not saying this passion is our God. I'm not saying that. God is God. That is that. There is no denying that. God is God. That is that. Plain and simple. But our passions come from inside of us. And this is that intensity and enthusiasm. Is that spirit the intensity and the enthusiasm? It might well be, but only you can decide that. I think it is, because we have this passion that drives us, and we are just so, we're in love with it. We don't want to give it up. We want to push through all the adversity that comes with it. And it just drives us to get better and better and better, to put us in those uncomfortable positions to progress. So I think that intensity and that enthusiasm is that passion within ourselves. All right. The next part I highlighted was the spirit flows with purpose. What I take away from that is, this passion inside of us, there is a reasoning behind it, whether it's, a DNA trait, whether it's, just something we all enjoy, whether it's, I say we all enjoy, but, whether it's something, a group that you just found that you really enjoy, and you meet a lot of people and you're all passionate about this one thing. I think there's a lot that goes into that, and there is a purpose behind it. There is a purpose behind everything. All right, moving on to the next page. All right, what I have highlighted next is, if you ask me what I'm going to do in heaven, I'll tell you this. Why should I think about something that's far away when there's so much to this life I haven't learned about or even accomplished? So, disclosure, I should have said this at the very beginning before I started doing this review on what I've highlighted. None of the stuff I say is verbatim. I might say some things close, but none of it is verbatim. None of it is my own words. It is all attributed to the author, the publisher, and the editor of this book, but none of it is my own. None of it. I take no credit for it, nor do I want the credit or anything. I'm not sponsored, nothing. This is just my own take on it. All right. So I'm actually going to argue. I'm actually going to disagree on that, because how do you know when you'll get to heaven or hell, for that matter? Like, how do you know? You don't. It comes about. Now, you might have certain situations where things come up in life, and you get diagnosed with something. God forbid that happens. But okay, you've got a prognosis, and, you got the diagnosis, you got the prognosis, you've got all these things going on, and you've got a timetable. But it could come on like that, and you could be gone tomorrow. It could be 10 months from now. You don't know. Tomorrow is never certain, only now. So I kind of disagree with that one. All right. Next part I highlighted was, each person's spirit is, determined or manifested by their own thoughts. Absolutely. Absolutely. I have no counter argument for that whatsoever. You are what you think. Your thoughts become your actions. Your actions become your reputation. Your reputation is who you are. So your thoughts determine who you are, good or bad. All right. The next part I'm going to discuss is, religions is like a martial art. And what I mean by that is, why do they need to divide each other? Like, we all unite under this one, there's a higher entity. That's all there is to it. No need to, there's no need to disagree about, oh, your religion's wrong, mine's right, and I'm gonna, fight for what I believe in. Yeah, well, so are they, because they believe they're right and you're wrong. And it's a never-ending negative feedback loop. It just keeps going and going and going. It's circular reasoning, and it's ridiculous. Like, you have your religion, I have my religion. Cool, that's awesome. Would I like to learn more about it? Would you like to learn more about it? Sure, cool, great. But that doesn't necessarily mean we have to be upset at each other and disagree over everything. Moving on from that, because I know that can be a hot topic. The next part I highlighted was basically, your expressions are from within. So what you express is how you inwardly feel. So your outward expressions are your inward thoughts or your inward feelings. totally can get on board with that. All right. Now, this next part, you should seek elegance or refinement or getting better. You should seek what is right. Now, moral and ethics, that can get a little tricky, but what is actually right versus what is right for that decision? And you might be confused or you might be saying that makes no sense. So do what is right. Do not do what is popular. That's what I take away from it. What last part I took away was, your spirit, your inwardly passion is what controls your body. Yes and no. Like your passion, your drive, absolutely. That controls your body and what you do. However, it's also, I think your mind controls that passion, and your mind controls your body controls your mind. There's a lot of things that go into it, but I don't necessarily believe that your passion alone will drive what you do. Now, I might be wrong in that, and that's okay. I don't expect to be right on a lot of things. I expect to learn from everything. I never expect to be right. I expect to learn. And what I am right about, cool. All right, y'all. That concludes today's episode of A Ferrell Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to follow. Don't forget to share. Share it with your friends. Share it with family. Help me out. All right. And, for those that do share it and stuff, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the love. Whether you listen for 10 seconds or whether you listen for the whole episode, I appreciate all the love. All right, y'all. That's it. Ferrell out.